Always Outnumbered, Always Outgunned by Walter Mosley. Double Standard, Section 1. It was an L.A. rain, straight down and hard. Socrates stood under the shelter of a glass bus stop. The walls had been smashed away, but the roof was still intact. Intact means that it was still there and it wasn't broken. He stood in the gloomy twilight waiting for the RTD bus because there was a chill in his chest, and 3 miles walking in the rain might have been his last walk. Gloomy means sad. Twilight is the time right before darkness. The RTD is probably the Regional Transportation District. And he's saying that if he walked in the cold with his chest, he'd probably die. Across the street, 2 lovers stood under a doorway. At least she stood in the shelter of the small adobe ledge that jutted out over the abandoned shop's door. Adobe is a type of building material. A ledge is like a shelf. To jut out means to come out straight. Socrates thought that the store was a baker's shop at one time because there was a faded sign that had wan blue and white checker squares across it. The letters HEL were all that was left of the word spelled out over the blue design. A baker's shop, Socrates thought. He could see in his mind's eye the black men and women waking up at 3 a.m. and taking the same bus that he waited for to get there by 4:30. He could almost feel the sleep in their eyes and the stiff yawns that came out when they tried to say good morning. Bakers have to start working really early in the morning so that their goods are available for people to buy first thing in the morning. It's a very hard job. The shiver in their bones as they uncovered the big blending machines and the bitter taste of coffee on the black humps of their tongues. A pattern as regular as those blue and white checks. Each one a perfect little square, each one exactly the same size as the one before it and the one after. The paycheck had little blue white squares on it, Socrates was sure. They made good money at the bakery, on the whole, because bakers worked long hours and long weeks. On the whole means that if you take everything into consideration. Socrates was happy thinking about those prosperous black people. Prosperous means that you're succeeding, making money. Hard workers making money, taking the bus to their little houses down on Central, sending their kids off to school. Central's a street. He smiled and saw again the lovers wrestling in front of the boarded-up shop. The man was large, verging on fat. His unprotected backside was getting soaked by the rain cascading off the ledge. But he didn't care at all. He hunched down over the small woman, kissing and touching, pressing her against the door. The violent, rhythmless rain accompanied their passion. They lunged with their mouths. "Ralphie," she cried. Socrates barely heard her over the din of rain. The young woman rested her head on Ralphie's shoulder and called out things into his ear. For some reason, it all seemed to fit. The rain, the lost business, the lovers out in the empty street and the failing light. He turned away, giving them what privacy he could, and saw a bus coming down the avenue. He peered out intently, hoping that it was his bus, that he'd be home soon. "Ralphie, Ralphie," the young woman screamed. Socrates stared harder at the bus. "Ralphie, the bus, baby," she cried. The lovers came running across the street, splashing through puddles and squealing from the cold rain. In the shelter of the bus stop, she smoothed down her short skirt and pushed back her gold-frosted, straightened hair. Even though their eyes met, she didn't really look at Socrates. Her smile was not for him, but he reveled in the glistening dark eyes and smug satisfaction that sang through her body. "It's this 86A," she said, pointing to the bus. Not Socrates' line. "Why don't you wait for the next one?" Ralphie asked. His voice was gruff and petulant at once. The bus was only half a block away, barreling down fast. "Come on, Linda," Ralphie demanded. "Stay." "I got to go, Ralphie," she said, cold as that rain. "I'll see you Tuesday, though, right?" The bus's brakes squealed on up to the stop. "Stay," he said, taking her by the hand. The bus doors came open and Linda took a step backward into the door. "Come on, hurry it up," the bus driver said. Linda, both feet up in the bus and bent half over, tugged twice against Ralphie's grip. She yelled, "Let me go, Ralphie," like a child trying to get her best friend in trouble. She couldn't have broken the big man's grip. His hands were almost as large as Socrates' rock-breaking mitts hands. But Ralphie let her go. She fell backward into the bus. The doors levered shut immediately. "See you Tuesday," Ralphie cried out, but the bus was already moving on. The big man got on his tiptoes in a vain attempt to see her one last time. But the rain was too hard, and the bus swerved at the wrong angle. Even if the weather had been good, he wouldn't have been able to see her. "Ralphie?" Socrates thought. Section 3. Close up, Socrates could see Ralphie's dark face. It protruded or stuck out from his oval-shaped head, a perfect egghead with fish eyes and big lips that Socrates imagined were even more swollen from Linda chewing on them. The big man didn't want to have anything to do with Socrates. That was no surprise. Socrates' khakis were stained and faded. There were thick veins at the knees from where he'd mended the second-hand pants. To mend something means to fix, so he took 2 pieces of fabric and stuck them together, and then sewed them together, and it left a seam. His bright red striped t-shirt, even under the army jacket, made him look like some kind of fool. Top all that off with a tan fishing cap that had Fisherman's Wharf stitched across it, and you had a bum, what people called a street person in the 1990s. A bum would be someone who doesn't have a place to live or a job. Socrates liked to talk to people, but he didn't have to talk to Ralphie. He didn't care about the young man. He would have let things lie if the bus had come, if the rain had let up and allowed him to wander away from the shelter, if Ralphie had just nodded or said something to make him feel like he was at least considered a part of the human race. There was a time that Socrates would have hurt a man for ignoring him the way Ralphie did. Socrates Fortlow was a violent man. He'd come up hard and gave as good as he got. The rage he carried brought him to prison, but the Indiana Correctional Authority wasn't able to stem or stop his anger. He looked Ralphie in the eye, giving him one last chance to be civil or nice. Ralphie registered no more recognition than if a stray dog had regarded him. That means that Ralphie showed no more interest in talking to Socrates than if he were looking at a stray dog. "Your backside got pretty wet there, brother," Socrates said, proving that he had the ability to speak. The young man looked. Then he sneered and shook his head. "Listen, man," Ralphie pointed his finger, "I'm letting you stay here because nobody should be out in any rain like this. But I don't want you talking to me here." Socrates smiled. "What are you laughing at?" Ralphie wanted to know. "Oh," Socrates sang, "I just think it's funny." What's funny? Ralphie took a step forward. Another man might have been frightened of Ralphie's bulk or size, but Socrates wasn't scared. I don't know. I mean, here you are calling me names, and really it's you are playing, cheating on your own wife and kids. Here you are making out with a teenage girl, and you've got a perfectly good woman at home. If a black man could have turned white, you know Ralphie would have been able to run for president right then. That's what Socrates said to Wright Burke 2 weeks later. This is a hard passage. Here, Socrates is talking to the man that was making out with the girl and telling him that he's being bad because he's got a wife and kids at home, but he's got a girlfriend out on the street. Here, Socrates is remembering what he told to a friend of his, Wright Burke, 2 weeks later. And in that, he says that the man, Ralphie, turned really white. He got pale because of what Socrates said to him. Ralphie's eyes bulged or got big, and he seemed to lose his balance for a moment. He put out a hand to steady himself against the shelter, but the glass wall had been broken or busted out long ago, and the big man stumbled sideways. Socrates grabbed him and helped him upright. "What are you talking about, man?" Ralphie said, pushing the powerful hands away. Socrates smiled again. "You know what I'm saying. You are Ralphie McPhee, right?" "Yes, you are." "Who are you?" Ralphie demanded. "What difference does that make? Just before you wouldn't even say boo to me. Now you want to be my friend?" "Don't mess with me, old man. I might have to beat you up." "Beat me up, and you'll never get to see that girl again," Socrates said. He tried not to use foul language too much. Ooh, you can't see that. Socrates said he tried not to use bad language too much after prison, but he knew that he had to get the point across to Ralphie before Ralphie made the mistake of trying to fight. It worked. Ralphie took a closer look at Socrates and saw something the poor men living on the edge of mayhem can recognize without naming. Mayhem is like chaos or complete lack of control. Socrates knew what he saw, the look of hard resolve. To be resolved to do something means that you're committed to it, that you're going to do it. Socrates was ready for anything, and he and Ralphie both knew it. "Forget you, man." Ralphie took a step back from danger. "Uh-huh, yeah. Tell me something, Ralphie." When no reply came, Socrates went on. "How come you're out here acting this way, and you can't even see me?" Ralphie wasn't listening. His eyes were roving or moving over the possibilities of the problems he could have over being seen. "Huh?" he snorted. "I said, how come you're out here acting like this?" "What are you talking about, fool?" "I'm saying that here you are out in the streets, making out with some girl in front of a man that lives only 2 blocks from you. Shoot, I've talked to your wife and your little boy. What's his name? Oh yeah, Warren." It was hearing his son's name that put real fear into Ralphie. "Hey man," he said, "this isn't of any of your business." "It isn't?" "Not one bit. So you better just shut your mouth, Trap, and forget what you think you know, 'cause you don't know a thing about me." "Oh yeah, I do," Socrates said. I know you front and back." "Hey," Ralphie pushed his hands out and to the side in a mock breaststroke. That's a way of swimming. "I'll kick your butt if you want to mess with me." "Touch me," Socrates pointed down to the dark cement under their feet, "and I will leave you cold and dead on this here floor." Ralphie saw the hand slip into the khaki pocket. He saw the flat mud luster in the older man's eyes. He drew back into silence except for a hiccup that he couldn't stifle. Just then a police car cruised slowly by. The 2 white faces peered or looked through the glass and rain at the 2 black men. A light flashed out, and the patrol car slowed almost to a stop. But then it went on. The rain, Socrates thought. The boys don't want to get wet. Section 4. Are you going to answer my question, boy? What do you want, man? You want a couple of dollars? I want to know what you got against your wife. Oh, Angel. That's her name. Socrates saw the name sink into Ralphie's shoulders. The young man slumped down and shook his head. I don't even know you, man, Ralphie said. That's right, you can't even see me when I'm standing here right next to you. Can't even say, hey, brother, what's happening? You can't see me, but I could see you. So what do you want? It wasn't so much the question, but the pain in Ralphie's voice that stopped Socrates cold. He thought about those imaginary workers in the bakery that might have stood there. He thought about thinking about what he'd do if they ever let him out of jail. He thought about the cold in his chest and the fact that the wiring in his apartment couldn't take the strain of an extra electric space heater. That means his apartment can't have a space heater because the electricity isn't good enough. 100 needs went through Socrates' mind, but nowhere could he find Ralphie. Maybe Linda.